It's different. If you could restore, as we know, China has an enormous amount of heritage, and a lot of it got destroyed due to natural disasters or communism or rebellions. Now you have the power to bring back a certain relic or monument that was destroyed or damaged in time. Which one do you pick, and why do you think it's more important, more valuable, more interesting, and why do you think your monument or artifact is better to restore if you
Oh,
had that magic wish?
I have a good one.
CJ, actually
Hmm?
give your choices first, and CJ will
All right.
start after.
Oh, okay. My choice is the books burned by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. The hundred schools of thought, all
Mm.
these thousands of
Oh,
years of history lost in this burning, in his
okay.
attempt to burn all of them.
Great, great. You have to explain. I've never heard of this, so you have to give
All
it a little bit of a clue what that is before saying what the restoration would bring. Craig?
Oh, that's a good one. Mine is similar. It's the old summer palace.
Okay, okay. All right. So restoration time.
right. Okay. No,
Oh,
who's
is
going?
it?
Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready, CJ.
Oh, okay, me. All right, cool. Yeah, this book, because before China was unified by Qin Shi Huang in the around the 200s BC, there are 100 schools of thought. There are different like ideas, philosophers, all this until it's been reduced to quite a few schools of thought, Confucianism, Mohism. A lot of the books are lost. So there is this thousands of years of not just history, but philosophy, knowledges, sciences, maths, everything. They have been burned down by Qin Shi Huang. This is a very famous part of history. And all that we have right now in it is mostly things that have been rediscovered or rewritten by scholars, and we have lost all these ideas. One of the bigger ideas is that there are different versions of history, that would give us a different outlook on how the Chinese history started. So it would give us a different sort of I would say an alternate view of history and a bit more complete history and all this lost information that we can't get anymore.
Mm.
Well, it's kind of difficult to emphasize more on this, but if you are part of the culture, you would consider that to be part of the greatest destruction of a few thousand years of
Time.
intellectual development.
Okay. Interesting. Just for the record, how did they get destroyed and why did he destroy them?
Because he wants to unify everything in the
Oh
states.
wow.
He unified measurements, he unified currency, unified everything. He also
Mm,
want to unify the thoughts, and
wow.
he also burned a lot of Confucians. But the idea is that
Mm,
Confucians sometimes is synonymous with scholars. So any
mm.
intellectual ideas, any intellectual thought were destroyed.
Interesting. Thank you. Craig, Summer Palace.
This is an interesting debate because they're both similar in the scope of a ton of things were destroyed that was vast amounts of history. So for the summer palace, for those who don't know, it's misleading, the title palace, because it's literally like a few different sized football fields of these extravagant gardens that are holding the tributary gifts of centuries that have been given to it's the wealth that's come from the external world into China from their tributaries, and alongside similar to his, it's all the literature is stored there that gets burnt down by the British during the Second Opium War. It's such a tragedy that to this day, the current Chinese government kind of has a monument, but aren't really. There's plans to rebuild the old Summer Palace at some point, but it hasn't been finalized, and it's part of their history. It's this horrifying event that's made them as people. Basically, to this day, it's a very sticky issue, but
Mm,
it's overwhelming what was stolen. It was plundered by the French and the British. It held gold, silver, jewels, gifts from around the world that China had accumulated during some of its highest points, because China, especially during the Qing dynasty, was the leading civilization. They had the world's amount of silver. They had received so many different gifts. countless artifacts were destroyed during this. It was a tragedy. And the only thing I can differentiate is while his is limited to literature, which was, of course, it's the foundation of their society, this had literature and countless gifts as well, and things that were made and things that are gone from this world.
Time. Damn. Follow-up question for you. The British and the French, did they keep some of this stuff? Is it all destroyed? Is it in some museums?
They stole, especially the French. I have to say, a lot of the British get the entire rap for the Opium Wars, but the French were the ones who plundered this place the most.
But
and Queen Victoria received gifts.
Can some of these gifts still be found today, seen today?
Museums.
Wow. Okay. Another sticky issue. Okay.
Yeah.
CJ, counter time. Why is the loss of the Summer Palace not that devastating?
Yeah. It's not that devastating because it is really localized, and it's mostly stuff that's owned by the elites. The normal people don't really care that much about it. And with what happens is that with the loss of all this intellectual knowledge from the burning of the books by Qin Shi Huang, is that there are all these possible futures and possible development of China that could have been had, but perhaps alternative history where things could have been better, that's been limited by this one action. They have pretty much closed the idea and just created a tunnel of development of Chinese history, but it could have perhaps developed in a lot of different ways. And the destruction of the Summer Palace, it is not really that big of a deal because, as most people in China would know, that object is not worth as much as people's life or people's future. So it's not that big of a deal, to be honest.
Time. Okay,
Craig? Excellent point. In the older world, these things happen quite often. The burning of Alexandria, of the library, right. If it happened, by the way, there's some stories about that. The loss of such literature is rapid in the world, whereas I find in the modern age, this was the last vestige that held countless information from previous dynasties like the Ming and such. And it was lost to scholars who at the time could have codified it and brought it to the rest of the world. Whereas in the ancient world, other countries, it couldn't have happened. They couldn't have possibly retained all that information. That information is a lot harder to hold on to. It's a lot easier to lose. And well, it was lost. Whereas in more modern history, this information, countless other scholars from other nations usually come around to other countries and they try to retain it. And this was lost, and it was a tragedy that the British and the French did.
Oh, right. Damn it! This is getting harder and harder.
His is better. Sorry, he picked a much better one. He's right.
So much for my judgment.
No, because when he said like this was the ruling elites hoarding of a bunch of tributary gifts, he's absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a solid point. And coming from a channel that specializes in telling the stories of the not just elites but everyday people too, that was spot on. And I gotta give it to him. That was a brutal counter. The main was also really solid. That